Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Welcome back to There's No Business Like. Josh Benson here from the Marion Cultural and Civic Center. I am here with my friends, Brian
Zelmer from Bardavon Presents in Poughkeepsie, New York today.
Danielle with her beautiful hair.
Oh, hey, thanks. It's Danielle Van Hook, fresh from the salon, but I happen to work at the Allen in McLean, Virginia.
Katie.
Hi, everyone. Katie Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates in sunny Midland, Michigan.
And our cowboy-faced friend, Kevin Maynard.
Kevin Maynard coming at you from Tallahassee with opening nights at Florida State University.
Well, y'all, I am very excited for this week. At the MAX conference, I had a chance to sit down with Norbert Leo Butz. And before we get into that conversation, I want to know, what was your first named role in a play or musical, and what did you enjoy the most about that role?
So mine is a little weird because my first role that I got cast as a named character was Albert in Bye Bye Birdie, but it was a school production and my grades were so bad when the principal found out that I was cast, it made the director kick me out of the whole show and not be able to perform it. Then thankfully my English teacher went to bat for me and got me back in the show, but I then became a chorus member. And so I don't know if that counts.
I don't know, but that's a great story.
Yeah. Really should have had Brian go last.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot more to that story, too, because that was a year of the measles outbreak, and we ended up not being able to perform the show. And so then Tommy Toon was performing at the Paramount Theater in Middletown, New York, heard of our story because it closed down our whole show and invited us to do all of the musical numbers. He like cut his set list like in half and let us be part of his show to do all of our musical numbers from Bye Bye Birdie. So we got to perform not the whole show, but sections of it in the Paramount Theater in Middletown, New York. So that was a cool experience.
Did everyone survive?
I don't remember anyone locally in our area even getting it, coming down with it.
Oh, there wasn't an outbreak in the cast.
No, it was an outbreak nationally, and it just, for whatever reason, it closed down our school for a week or something, and we couldn't do the show, and then we couldn't because it was the end of the school year. We just couldn't get a date to do. The school wouldn't let us do the show.
I didn't even realize that Bye Bye Birdie was a pre-war era musical.
No, this was in the 90s.
1890s?
1990s. It was in the 1900s, way back then.
Katie, what about you?
I mostly played ensemble roles, and I was the dance captain for a bunch of musicals and even choreographed some musicals in high school. And so I think throughout my entire theater career, the only named role I've ever had was the angel Chastity in Anything Goes.
Was that with or without measles?
Without measles. Did not do measles
Thank God.
during that show.
You're a hoofer then, like you could tap.
I'm a hoofer. So I did the angels part, and then I actually choreographed that musical while also playing that part when I was a junior in high school, I think. And then a few years later, when I was managing the Playhouse at White Lake, I pick up the mail one day and get a licensing catalog from the company that held the licensing to Anything Goes at that point in time. And who was on the cover but the cast of Muskegon Catholic Central production of Anything Goes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm smack dab in the middle of the photo.
How awesome is that? Do you still have that? Hopefully you have it framed somewhere. I would.
I've probably got it in a box in the basement somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Well, get it out. It's time for Chastity to rise. My first time auditioning for children's theater, I was cast in, I can't think of what the show was. Like, I think it was maybe Snow White, but I honestly am not sure. It was something that takes place in the woods. And my role was called The Enchanted Vixen. And I had like a scene at the beginning. I forget what I did. I think I did some kind of magical forest creature shit. And I think I maybe came back in the end. But I always thought that was the goofiest title for a role.
It's the best. I still think that you are an enchanted vixen.
Yeah, I think my days of doing that are over. But my favorite named role that I had a couple of summers later at the same children's theater was Goldilocks, mostly because I just got to like walk through the set and just like destroy it and like pull stuff out and mess stuff up and like, throw the bowl like over. And that was very fun to me. It was a lot. I skipped nearly all the lines. Not my forte. I just messed stuff up. More of a physical actor.
It became a mime show.
Like, I don't know this line. I'm about to tear this place down.
It's like, I probably throw stuff here, so let's do that.
Honestly, I've been racking my brain to figure out like what my first named role is. The one that I guess comes to mind was when I was in high school. I was Jeffrey in The Curious Savage.
I don't know that one.
Oh gosh, it's a really great show.
Well, Kevin with the least successful story there. My first musical and my first role was Speedy McRabbit in Little Abner. And he's basically the town idiot. He's one of the comic reliefs for the show.
Oh, typecast.
Absolutely.
I had, had the opportunity to just like go out and ham it up in front of full crowds and never skipped a beat and never hesitated to jump out there and just be as funny as I could. So
it has never looked back.
No. And they encouraged me to improv and expound upon the part, which was a giant mistake. What went from a 30-second portion on stage went to a 5-minute comedy act on stage. It's pretty fabulous. I was pretty happy with it. And so all that leads us into this interview with Norbert Leo Butz, where he talks about his first experience with the musical on Broadway and how the majority of his theater experience up until his first Broadway role was in straight plays and in traditional theater and not in musical theater. And how he just kind of fell into a Broadway leading man role. So enjoy this interview with Norbert Leo Butz, and we'll catch you on the backside.
Hi, I'm Norbert Leo Butz.
Norbert, thank you for joining us for There's No Business Like.
Sure, thanks, Josh.
So let's just start right off the bat. How did you originally land within the industry?
Oh gosh. How long is your podcast? I'm a late bloomer. I didn't do my first Broadway show until I was 28 years old. I didn't move to New York until I was 28 years old. My first Broadway show, I was stupid lucky. 6 weeks after arriving in New York City, I was cast in the musical Rent on Broadway. I talk about that in my one-man show that I do, about how I got so lucky. I was busking and doing open mics and got seen by a publicist for Rent, which at the time, and this was fall of '96, was like the Hamilton of its day, right? It was this huge behemoth of a show, and that's what kind of broke down doors for me. I got my first agent, my first manager. And
how did you land within Rent?
Yeah, so I spent my 20s, I did it kind of backwards. A lot of people graduate from college, or they do a training program, or when they're in their late teens or early 20s, they go to New York City with a dream in a suitcase, and I did it kind of opposite. I did a lot of training. I did a BFA in St. Louis, Missouri at Webster University, and then I did an MFA at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival down in Montgomery, Alabama. And I was already equity. I was already a working actor doing regional theater. And I was also a musician. I grew up singing in church. I'm from a big, big religious family. We sang in church. I grew up playing guitar and piano. I studied voice. I was studying opera when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. But the singing and the acting were always really separate for me. I was not indoctrinated into musicals. I didn't really... We did a musical in the high school. I did Guys and Dolls like everybody else does, but that wasn't the dream for me. I'd fallen in love with films, and I wanted to be a legit actor, and then I wanted to maybe be also a singer-songwriter. And I never pursued musical theater per se. So,
but you had a life history in music, and you did theater.
Correct. So I was already, like I said, I was working professionally doing classics. I did my MFA down at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, so I'm doing a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of classic plays, new plays, working at regional theaters in Missouri, Indiana, Atlanta, Georgia, around like that. And when I was 28, I was married. We were expecting our first child, and I just said, before I'm 30, I want to try one of the big markets, right? And so we had $1,000 to our name, and we just said, we're going to give this a year or two, and we'll see what happens. And like I said, I got stupid lucky. While I was I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a manager. While I was just kind of going on general auditions, I went and sang at a friend's open mic, was doing some covers of songs that I do, and a publicist for Rent happened to be one of like 8 people in this audience. Got me an audition the next day in front of Bernie Telsey, the casting director. I did a couple more auditions, and 6 weeks after arriving in New York City, I'm playing the lead in Rent on Broadway every Sunday night, and then took over the role full-time for the next year. And then everything has really flowed.
Were you the
that.
first replacement for Roger in Rent?
I was Adam Pascal's standby. And then when he left after the first year, I took over the role full time.
Wow.
And everything, it's been a kind of an organic process. Like everything has really come from that. People say, oh, I got super lucky. I did get super lucky. But as I said, when I landed at 28, I was already in the union. I trained all through my 20s. I did a year in London where I studied. So I was primed. Do you know what I mean? It was like that saying when
you were already a mature performer.
Correct. What's that saying when opportunity meets preparation? So yeah, and then things just flew from there. And then this weird thing happened. I landed in this musical theater career. So I was in Rent, and Rob Marshall was looking for somebody to play the MC in the first national tour of Cabaret, the production he did with Sam Mendes. And so I was the first person to do that after Alan Cumming. I did a national tour of that. From that show, Jason Robert Brown saw me, and I did a musical called The Last 5 Years. And then it was nothing but musicals for me.
Yeah.
And then
you were original cast of Last 5 Years as well?
I was. I originated the role of the young man in that show. And then I originated the roles in many, many musicals over the next 20 years. And
so let's talk about the one that has all the hype right now, which is Wicked.
Yeah, again,
which has a beautiful resurgence. It just had record-breaking grosses this far into its tenure on Broadway.
22 years on, yeah. Incredible. And it's so funny, Josh, you should mention that. I saw Wicked last week on Broadway for the first time in 20 years since I left the show. I took my 14-year-old daughter to see. I have 2 older daughters who were basically raised backstage during Wicked, but my youngest hadn't been, and I hadn't seen the show in 20 years. And as fate would have it, I live outside of New York City in a community in suburban New Jersey. And I was walking my dog last year, and this tall, handsome guy was like, hey, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jordan Litz, and I'm playing Fiyero on Broadway right now. And he's my neighbor, and we've become great friends. And so Jordan called me, and we've become really good friends. And he's like, I've got a comp for the show if you want to come see it. And so I went and saw it, and I was so moved. I met my wife on Wicked. Mm-hmm. That my daughter that I took was, a result of Wicked in a sense. And so, and the show still really packs a punch. It's still being performed beautifully.
Yeah.
It moves people like nothing I've ever been in before.
And there are parallels to our current political climate that makes it so
for sure
currently resonant.
Well, that original novel by Gregory Maguire, Wicked, is a really overtly dystopian novel about authoritarianism and fascism and all these types of things, and words that get bandied around a lot these days, for better or for worse. But yeah, the show actually, underneath the kind of girl power themes of it, has a real pungent message.
Yeah. How did you land in the role of Fiyero within Wicked?
So, if I'm not mistaken, I was doing, like I said at the top of this interview, things have just flowed for me, and I'm very grateful for that. I was doing The Last 5 Years off Broadway. Joe Mantello, the director of Wicked, came and saw it. I was sent a script to see if I'd want to come audition, and I turned the audition down because I thought the script wasn't finished yet. It was just Act 1, and Fiyero was kind of a throwaway character. And they were looking for like a Disney prince, and I'm not that. I'm much more of a character actor and kind of a weirdo. I just thought, this isn't a good fit for me. And frankly, I wanted to move. I wanted to be considered for non-singing roles. Everything was just singing. I was really hoping to break through in films, and so I turned it down. And then 6 months later, they came back to me. They still hadn't cast it, and they said, just give it a read. And the script was done by that point, and I went and I read for the team, and then I did a chemistry read with Kristen Chenoweth, and She was a dream. I was really good friends with Adina because we had done Rent together on Broadway already, so we were already friends. And so, yeah, it just kind of, so I think Mantello was really the reason that I got.
Well, and the second act is where you really see the complexities of Fierro's character coming
Exactly.
into it.
Yeah, and I think that's what Joe really sold me on it. He was like, hey, this isn't just like a dumb prince. This is a guy who really goes through transformation. Stephen Schwartz had written that song, Dancing Through Life, specifically for me. There was another song that was done in the out-of-town tryout, and it wasn't really working. And he was like, who are your favorite artists? And I was like, I'm a huge fan of Sting and the Police. So he came up with that part of the song that, let's go down to the Ozdust Ballroom. It's got this kind of ska reggae type feel to it that was directly lifted from the Police. And so it's a real honor when you're working on a new show and have a composer sort of say, hey, how can we make this work for your voice and what you do? And so, yeah, it's really special. And then I left Wicked, actually. Before my contract was out, I went from Wicked into Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is, I think a lot of people forget that I was even in Wicked because I was only in it for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then I went on to this other thing that I think I became much more well known for. But I have a lot of great memories from that show.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was your 4th Broadway show.
Correct.
And you had the Tour of Cabaret in there as well.
Correct. And I'd already had a Tony nomination for a show that Harry Connick Jr. wrote. And wrote some songs for me and called Thou Shalt Not. Didn't last long and it wasn't successful, but wrote me some great jazz songs. I really fell in love with jazz singing for that. But yeah, Dirty Rotten, I guess, was my 4th Broadway show, yeah.
With that role, you clearly embodied it wholly because you won the Tony for it. How did it feel getting into a role with Dirty Rotten Scoundrels that was a role that's more known as a character, whereas you were able to create the character and work with the composers in so many of these other pieces to make it fit you, where you had to now fit into something that's already expected?
It's a good question.
And I mean, you obviously did well. You won the Tony. So how did that work for you?
I had an amazing director, Jack O'Brien, and every time anybody talks about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I completely credit him with any success. I love comedy, and I had done a lot of comedy in college and like classic farces, but I was starting to get known for like these kind of heavy, darker musicals, you know what I mean? And Jack knew and was determined that I knew how to be funny. And I was super intimidated. I was surrounded, my co-star was John Lithgow, who's one of the funniest guys on the planet, Sherry Scott, who's hilarious, Joanna Gleason, all these hilarious people, Joanna Gleason, great comedian. I was really unfunny in that role for the first several weeks of rehearsal. And I thought I was gonna just be laughed off the stage. And then something clicked. Jack just created an environment that allowed me to just try anything I could possibly think of. And that script was so funny. By Jeffrey Lane, and of course David Yazbek wrote the score. Great, hilarious score. It was a huge learning curve for me, but once I embraced it, I went. Was there
an intimidation point with people like John Lithgow
totally
around you before you felt comfortable?
Completely. And I think what saved me is that we didn't open right in New York. We had 6 to 8 weeks in San Diego at the Old Globe Theater to really try out the material. And I got to fall on my face night after night after night until I really started to learn how to live in the comedy. And Jack taught me a really, really smart thing. He taught me this idea that comedy is that before you can be funny in a play, you actually have to set up the stakes in a very honest and truthful way. You can't just go out there and be like, laugh at me, I'm funny. You got to the character's got to really want something for real. And then when it all falls apart in the course of the play, then it's funny. So Jack really helped me with the structure of that. So like these guys in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, like Freddie, the guy I played, is scraping by, man. The guy is like the lowest level con artist. Like he's eating in train stations and living off of like simple cons and doesn't know where his next meal's. Like he's desperate, right? So he helped me to tap in what was actually really human about the guy. And once you do that, then it can get funny.
Yeah, the authenticity is what builds the comedy to ensue.
Completely, yeah. And once I kind of approach it as an actor, then I just had to do what was written, which was really funny. Jack would say to us all the time, "You're not funny, the play is. Stop trying to be funny. It's already funny. You got to be honest with it." And that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
After Dirty Rotten Scoundrels,
Yep.
you've now had all of these amazing roles, made a huge name for yourself on Broadway.
Yeah.
Become a Tony Award-winning performer. What's next? Is there at that point in your career, is there a lot on your shoulders that you feel like you have to live up to?
A lot. And I always, I meet young actors, or I have, the Tonys come on each year, and I see these young actors, and they're getting nominated, or they're not getting nominated, and all the pressure that's around it. And it does. Suddenly, after the afterglow, there's this kind of period where you're just like, wow, now what do I do? And there's this new attitude around people around you. It's like, oh, you got Tony Award, now show me. People like, sit back, show me what you got. You're a big deal. So a lot of imposter syndrome can kind of set in. And the way I've always just kind of battled that is just kept on going to the next job, And after Dirty Rotten, I'd really, 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 like I said, wanted to do plays. And I actually started turning down musicals at that point. I got to do a few plays on Broadway, which was another goal of mine, sort of non-musical parts, so it just flexed my acting muscles. And I got a couple of development deals at the time when we still had network television that was doing development deals to develop comedy, and I helped to develop a couple of scripts. And
that really came directly from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Directly from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And while none of those projects works out, it led to me meeting more people in Los Angeles and opened up somewhat of a TV career for me. And in fact, in the last 10 to 15 years, I haven't done much Broadway at all. Only one show in the past 8 years, and it's been mostly television and films for me. Which is why I love still getting out there and touring as a singer. If it scratches that itch, I still am a musician. But yeah.
So how did you get roped back into the musical theater world? Because Catch Me If You Can followed in the
Yeah, I took a few
world.
years off, and then how I got roped back in was Jack O'Brien, my director from Dirty Rotten, who I had just became, he's still like a mentor to me. He called me and he was like, "I think you're too young for this part. I think people are going to say you're miscast, but I think you have something to bring to this." And it's all when like a project hits you. So he sent me the script. I was in Los Angeles filming a television show, and my dad, who's now gone, we lost him about 8 years ago. He'd been having health problems at the time, and he was in surgery. He was having heart surgery, and I was waiting to see, hopefully, that everything would come out all right. And that's when I got the script for Catch Me If You Can. Jack sent it to me in L.A., and I went to a diner and I started reading it, it's essentially a story about a young man looking for a father figure in his life, and a father figure who's really looking for a son. And I read that piece, and I started sobbing in this diner. It just got me right in the heart. I understood this kid. I understood this cop, this lonely father, childless cop. And I texted Jack back and I said, yes, I'll do this. And we did a workshop of it, and then we did an out of town, and then we opened on Broadway. And
was there
all I'll say is this, is that like, when people ask me how do I choose what I'm going to do next, I always remember that story, because for me, once you read something and you get that real direct emotional hit, it's not intellectual, it's not cerebral, just like a punch in the gut, that's when I know to follow a project or a song or a musical or a TV show, and you're always looking for that first emotional grab.
Now, that being your first foray back into musical theater after the Tony win, what kind of pressure was there for you within taking on that role, or did it feel just so perfect of a fit for you that you just went in?
I felt no pressure. I had nothing to prove to anybody. My dad had passed away while we were doing the show, and the whole show was just an homage to my dad. Even Carl Hanratty, if you look at photos, my siblings came and saw the show, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's Dad." I just did it as an honor to my dad, and he was just with me that whole time. So I didn't care about reviews or awards or anything like that. And when they happened, that was just a blessing. That's just an added.
Just for the record, you won your second consecutive Tony.
Yeah.
For a musical theater role. But once again, as you're saying, it was all about that authenticity for you and living out a tribute to your father.
Yeah, it really was.
In that moment.
I think, I'm 58 now. I've been doing this for 35 years. Oh my God. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this last night, who's a composer, who was up for an award that he did not get. And he was telling me how bummed he was. And it led to this incredible conversation about, there's a lot of things I don't love about being 58, don't get me wrong. But one of the things I do really embrace about it is the pressure I used to put on myself and the pressure that other people used to put on me about sort of bringing home the shiny objects, as it were,
Yeah.
That all starts to kind of fall by the wayside the older you get. And it's a really good feeling to just say, look, if I'm making enough money to pay my mortgage and feed my family, and if I love the material, I can't ask for anything more. I mean, I really can't.
And you've been back in TV for a while now.
Yeah. I've done several series now. I'm getting ready to go shoot another Netflix film just in a couple of weeks. Yeah, here's the thing about, we were talking before about like the state of the theater now. I frankly don't, I'd love to come back to Broadway and something, but I don't really know that there's a place for me on Broadway right now. It's become so difficult to finance these shows, right? They've just become so incredibly prohibitive. The rentals on the theaters, you can't believe it. What these producers have to pay to all the unions, the competition, right? With big shows like Wicked, like Hamilton, for those tourist dollars.
Yeah.
That, unless you're Hugh Jackman coming back in The Music Man for a 12-month run, or Josh Groban coming to do Sweeney Todd, it's becoming the competition for the tickets is incredible. So the risk is so high, and I'm like, oh God, do I want to keep risking that much at my age? I never say never, but I still love to sing.
Yeah.
And so that's why having this concert career is like so fulfilling to me.
How did your now concert career, how did that come about, and how did that come out for you? We started this conversation. I started as a busker, man. I grew up playing guitar and piano and singing. I wrote my own songs. I covered all my favorite artists, and I did that on the streets for a lot of years. And about 15 years ago, there's a club in New York called 54 Below, which has a lot of Broadway people, and they've been so wonderful to me. They're like, we want you to do a cabaret show. I'm like, cabaret? I'm not like a musical theater guy. I don't know a bunch of Sondheim songs, And they're like, come and do whatever you want to do. And over the past, 10, 12 years, I've curated 3 different cabarets for them now. They really give me a wide berth to kind of create a theme and do my brand of storytelling. And I love it. And
I just love it.
I laugh a little bit whenever you say I'm not a Broadway guy, being a 2-time Tony winner, 3-time nominee, originating all these roles.
4-time nominee.
4-time nominee. Yes. And so I laugh a little bit at you saying you're not a Broadway guy. But
what I mean by that, I suppose, is that because I didn't train in musical theater, I don't have like one of these sweeping, huge lexicon brains for the history of musicals and know every song that was written for musicals. I have friends who actually do know all that. That's what I guess I mean. So I started doing these shows at 54 Below and really loving them, and then word spread, and then I get asked to kind of come out to these different cities and see the country and do it all over the place.
These different cabaret sets that you created have become the shows that you're touring now. Kind of talk us through what that show looks like. Yeah,
I've done a bunch of them. This one right now I'm calling Broadway or Busk. And I worked with my friend Dick Scanlon on kind of writing a narrative about me starting as a street performer and that first lucky break that I got in New York, and how I think starting as a busking singer gave a different quality to my voice than maybe what people consider a typical leading man Broadway sound. I have more of a rough-hewn sound. I have a little bit more of a rocker belt, but I'm a trained singer, so I can do legit stuff as well. So it's just about taking the audience through the kind of improbability that, first of all, a guy with my name, let's just start with the name.
You don't think Norbert Butz is a iconic leading man
Josh,
name?
I was asked to change my name so many times, and I'm such a stubborn Midwest St. Louis guy. I was like, no, screw them. If they don't like the name, they don't, And I'm named after my dad. My dad's from Germany. His name was Norbert. And I was just like, it would break his heart if I ever said this name is.
And additionally,
trust me, I have times now where I'm like, why didn't I change that?
It's part of what makes your name so memorable, that it's not like everything else on Earth.
Yeah, people are like, oh, that's the worst name. I'm like, really? Is it really worse than Benedict Cumberbatch? Is it really worse than Mariska Hargitay? I mean, there are people with clumsy names out there. You know what I'm saying? Actually, I know Mariska and I love her. So
there's a rhythm to Norbert Leo Butz that it plays well.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's an evening of storytelling. I do some of the songs that I busked with, and then I do highlights from my career, and I do even do a couple of originals that I've penned. And yeah, I guess it's a cabaret about resilience and surviving in this pretty tough business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just a tough business, but a tough time in the business as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, Norbert, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I so greatly appreciate you sitting down here with us and being fun. A part of our podcast and really kind of letting us into what was behind your story and getting to Broadway. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
Well, I just have to say, I think all of us really enjoyed Norbert's showcase at the Midwest Arts Expo. It was a magical moment, I think, for everybody who was present. For me, hearing him sing Dancing Through Life, which closed out the set, hearing him sing that song live took me back to like when I was 18, driving down the highway, listening to the Wicked soundtrack, and it sounded exactly the same. Like, I was just so incredibly impressed with the tone and the quality of his voice. And it just, I don't know, it was a really magical moment. And I think everyone could feel it in the room. So I was really grateful we got to see that and experience that, and that he spent the time talking with Josh at the conference.
I'll say the one thing that I loved in his showcase was one song, Glory.
Yeah.
Just hearing him sing that was
so good.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
I love hearing his voice and his singing. I obviously wasn't at Max with you guys to see this showcase, but I did get to see him showcase with this fabulous Equinox Orchestra this past APAP. As much as I love his singing too, I really appreciated the stories where he gave each of the shows he was in and his story some context. And I think it just made it even more special. And obviously, you guys all know my affinity for the musical Rent, but hearing his whole Sunday Rogers story and how that came about and what that meant to him and where that led him is just something that I never knew about, even being a Rent head, a self-professed Rent head. So that was really cool to find out, and it was he's just a very cool performer, and he takes you on a ride. So I'm looking forward to hopefully someday working with him.
I went back and saw the second night of his showcase at Max. He did 2 nights. So I think I win for have seen the most Norbert showcases. And then we are going to get to host him here at the Alden in November. Nice. Yeah. So I'm about to have a Norbert year, and I just as heartbreaking as some of those songs are, just how beautiful and rich and gritty and like Katie said, they just take you back.
Yeah, Josh, it was really great hearing you guys talk just about his journey, getting to Broadway and sort of, what a crazy way to start really your Broadway career. But it was really great hearing you guys talk about, sort of the behind the scenes and leading into that role in Wicked, and just what that looked like, what that felt like, and, going from Rent and then working with people that, you know, he idolized and was intimidated by. So it was really great to hear that backstory there.
And I was really impressed with how self-aware he seemed to be sort of at every phase of his Broadway career, right? He kept referencing sort of not wanting to be typecast, wanting to try other things, pursuing a movie and television career. He just seemed like really thoughtful about that and really self-aware and self-possessed in that. And I really appreciated sort of the variety of things that he's pursued in his creative life. And I think it's like this great example of the roadmap is not straight. And you can take risks if you believe in yourself enough, and they're going to work out in the end. So I really just appreciated that about your conversation.
One of the things that struck me was his adoration for someone who really helped shape his career and pushed him into different roles and into things outside of what he had done before, with Jack O'Brien, who's a legendary Broadway director. He just received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Tonys in 2024. And just hearing how much that director shaped and directed literally parts of Norbert's life and the direction that he went from there.
So obviously you guys recorded this in the busy expo hall at our booth that you guys had, this Max, and you can hear the background noise and stuff, and you only had a little bit of time, so it was really cool to hear his story. I would love to hear a part 2 with Norbert and learn, you know, a little bit deeper about him, because he is really so interesting and has had such an interesting career, very different than a lot of Broadway performers. And so I think it would be inspirational to hear more. That's all. So Norbert, if you're listening, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of this interview was listening to him talk about how it was hard to be in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with John Lithgow and these other comedy people, and having this feeling that he's not funny. And the advice, and I've never heard this before, is that you're not funny. The play is funny. I feel like in some ways it like takes the pressure off of you, right? To like to dig in and to find, right? Rather than to feel like it's either in you or it's not, right? And like getting even that little taste of the process is, I mean, that really struck me. I've been chewing on that line for a little while here.
A big part of his career that I looked up to, even though I mentioned Rent is obviously huge in my life, is his participation in Big Fish. That storyline is just it's such a heart wrencher and like has so much heart in that show. And I got to work on that show with my son, Everett. We listened to a lot of Norbert Leo in the soundtrack, and it was just very special. And getting to talk to him too, he is very down to earth, very grounded and friendly and nice. And I'm so pleased that he's working with such an amazing person that is representing him with Pat Hazel. You know, Pat, we all love and is such a great person who helps lift people up in the industry. And I think that's a perfect pairing. And I'm so happy that Norbert Leo Butz chose Pat to do that.
I just have to say my personal connection to Norbert Leo Butz is I went to St. Norbert College in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and my son's name is Leo. So
there you go.
Wow. And you have a...
Well, special thank you to Norbert Leo Butz for sitting down with us, taking time with us. Thank you all for hanging out today. If you're a fan of Norbert and you want to catch his performance, you can see him November 1st at the McLean Community Center at the Alden, or you can see him in Southern Illinois at the Marion Cultural and Civic Center on December 12th. Yay. Thank you all for hanging out with us today, and we'll catch you next time here on There's No Business Like.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
So I didn't get to go to Max with all of you guys. I was very jealous, but I'm glad to see you guys had a good time. I heard the octopus stickers, the closet octopus stickers were like a big hit.
Big hit.
Huge
We
hit.
ran out.
Yeah. Huge hit.
I actually have I have a couple, and
I have
mostly
quite
I've got
a
one.
few.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I grabbed a couple. Made sure I had a couple, so I give one to Brian because I didn't know if Brian got one.
Thank you, Kevin.
Should those be limited run? Do you think we should come up with like another animal or another?
Or maybe we do us as babies.
Ooh, let's do the angry octopus on this next one.
That could be Brian. I could be the angry octopus because I'm known for my rants.
What about like an otter holding it?
That's so cute. Otter would be so adorable.
I think it would be better if we made Brian into an angry beaver.
What about Brybaka?
Oh yeah, that's true. I have Brybaka already. That's true. So I don't know what you guys are going to be.
Brybaka sticker? Can we take that and make it into a sticker?
We might get
can.
into trouble with copyright with.
Yeah.
No, we covered his face.
It's
Yeah,
it's
so-
a brown yeti. It's a very
Yeah.
tall brown yeti.
It's also known as a Sasquatch.
Yeah, it's true.
It's also known as Brybaka.